All right, everybody, here we go with episode 99 of Return to Authenticity. And this week's guest, Rich Ingram. We are right on the cusp of episode 100, and I cannot imagine a better guest to have at this precipice right here, right next to the top is Rich Ingram. And this is a gritty story. Rich really is vulnerable in this conversation. He is an Army veteran, and he suffers a catastrophic amputation of his left arm back in 2005 due to a injury from an IED attack. And he talks about what that did to him psychologically and then what it took to really get back in the game, get his head on right, and then begin driving forward. And he becomes determined to get himself back to the standard that would let him be operationally deployable, get back to an operational level in the Army, and deploy again. And it actually wasn't even a thing that you could do at that time. No one had done it. It was actually against a law, and he had to work first to get that law addressed. It's a super powerful conversation. Rich is really just raw and vulnerable in how he shares his talk. And man, if you're looking for some inspiration of overcoming massive odds, Rich is your guy. He's also someone that's close to my heart in terms of being an endurance athlete. He loves to run. He loves to do hard things. He talks about the value of those hard things and how it helped him to accomplish a victor's mindset and to really, again, recover and see the challenges in his life as being things that he could learn and grow from. It's really, really powerful conversation. And I'm excited to have Rich on the show. And this should air right around the 4th of July. I'm trying to group some of my veteran episodes right around the 4th of July. This should be really close to that. And so it's perfect timing. And so again, I invite you to sit back and enjoy this conversation and the learning that we're all going to take from this talk with episode 99 and Rich Ingram. Welcome to the show, everyone. Today's guest is Rich Ingram. On July 20th, 2005, Rich sustained injuries from an IED attack that resulted in the amputation of his left arm, and the Army forced him to retire. Rich did not accept that forced retirement, however, and he became relentless in pursuing his dream of leading men and women in combat as an officer. While recovering at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, he began competing in the sport of triathlon, which proved to be a catalyst for his recovery and the adaptation of a growth mindset. He worked with military leaders and government legislators to change the policy which would allow amputees to commission as officers, and Rich was the first, commissioning as a second lieutenant in December of 2008. He went on to serve 3 more tours between Iraq and Afghanistan as a combat engineer officer, before retiring in 2013 as a captain. Upon retirement, Rich held leadership positions with a Fortune 500 company and sold a profitable small business before becoming a keynote speaker on the topic of resilience. I'm excited to have Rich on the show today to share how he continues to push past limits as an ultramarathon endurance athlete while encouraging others to embrace life's challenges and thrive in adversity. And with that, Rich Ingram, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Eric. I appreciate it.
Man, it's going to be a great conversation, Rich. I'm so excited to have you on the show. Truly honored to have you here. Appreciate all that you've sacrificed for our great country and just inspired and just honored to have you on the show to be able to share your story, brother. So it's going to be a great topic. I know, a great talk, because I know you and I have a lot in common, a lot of areas we can dig deep in. So yeah. I invite the audience to buckle up. It's going to be a great conversation.
Right on, let's go.
Let's go. So let's talk about childhood, man. Where'd you grow up? What was your family life like? And what was your situation growing up as a kiddo?
So I grew up in LaGrange, Georgia, a small town in between Columbus and Atlanta on the Alabama border. And I was a pretty affluent family. My father was a physician. My parents actually met in medical school. And my dad started his practice there in LaGrange. And so for me, I had a really great childhood. However, as I started to get older in those teenage years, I started to loathe my father. And the reason is 'cause he wasn't like any of the other dads. I mean,
Mm,
my dad was an outlier. He was gone in the morning when I woke up, gone at night when I went to bed, worked 7 days a week.
mm.
He didn't come to baseball games or any of that stuff. But I saw all my other friends doing those things, like going to NFL games and WWC, WWE, whatever WW they call it now.
Right.
Hunting and fishing, and I didn't have access to those things, but all my friends were doing them, and so for me, I coined the term in hindsight. I started chasing air, and what I mean by that is I started doing what I thought would make me popular and get me into this popular because I was a supernova, right? With just all this energy, but no direction. I didn't have any direction, but I wanted what these other kids had. And I just kept chasing this air. What I did have access to, because I didn't have access to guns or a boat to go fishing, was booze and partying.
Right on.
And so, and so I became a drinker and a fighter. Man, I got in a lot of trouble growing up. Not, I wasn't like a bad kid, I guess, morally. But anyways, yeah, that's how a lot of my childhood, man, it was drinking and fighting. And so when I got an academic scholarship to which is not hard in the state of
I'm
Georgia.
gonna say something happened there. You got an academic scholarship. You must have been paying
uh,
attention in school a bit.
you just have to have like a over a 3.0 GPA, and I don't remember if you have to have an SAT. But anyways, I somehow got into the one college my parents would let me go to, which was one of 6 senior military colleges. And so because they were like, we're not, because they still had to pay for room and board or something. I don't know what it was. They're like, we're not paying for you to go to Auburn, Auburn
Georgia
University.
Tech or something, just go party it out.
Oh, dude, I wouldn't have gotten into Georgia Tech. Kidding me? I think I was hung over in the SAT. I don't even know how I got into the school I did. Um, but yeah, but growing up, I was always active in sports. I was really, really active kid when booze and partying wasn't getting in the way. But that's how I grew up. But at that military college, that was a blessing in disguise. Because even though I quit after my first semester, um, it's where I fell in love with the military because we lived in barracks. It
Yeah.
was, it was an ROTC program similar to Texas A&M, right? We had civilians and we had um, cadets, but it's the largest Army ROTC in the country,
What school?
and it's now called the University of North Georgia. It's in Dahlonega, Georgia, and just an amazing place, man. If you haven't been there, it's just such a cool mountain town.
Mm,
Great fly fishing in that area. Great
nice.
running. I mean, oh my gosh, when we used to train in college, and then we'd go do these races down in Florida. I mean, we would smoke
Yeah.
people.
Because you're all
Yeah,
hill trained and
oh yeah, I mean we are just your aerobic capacity is so high, because you're keeping the same times, but you're
yeah.
going up mountains.
Right.
Um, but yeah, that's how my childhood was, and again, um, you know, it came around full circle with my dad because he indirectly was the catalyst for my growth, my hero that
Mm,
really helped me turn my life around by teaching me um that to be successful, man, you got to learn to be an outlier. You have to figure out what you're willing to sacrifice to achieve your goals.
right, right, right.
So it took
So
me a while to realize it.
right on. So were you guys having conflict a lot growing up when you were doing the drinking and all that stuff? Was he trying to bang you back into the rails? Like, come on back, did he have sort of this plan? Did you see it maybe in hindsight? Like my dad was trying to help me stay on track. And so we had conflict, or what was that relationship like while you're
Oh, it
doing your
was
thing?
brutal. Yeah. Because my dad, I mean, when he was home, he was in his study reading and catching up on, I mean, whatever the new trends or science was in the medical field, and then too just personal development. I mean, he has so just recently he bought the house next door to him and turned it into a library. Just so if that tells you anything. Um, but
Yes.
I actually, so my parents were, well, they were very much involved in the community, and I got in so much trouble. Like I ended up going to youth detention center.
Mm.
I mean, the cops came and got me in high school. Like they walked down the hallway and handcuffed me, and it was all pretty much staged by my parents. Now, look, I did wrong, and I accept that. But for the most part, it was disorderly conduct,
Yeah.
minor under the influence. But once you get on that, it's like that adage, somebody goes to jail for something small, and then they never come out just
Yeah.
because they're not institutionalized. And so that was kind of how it was for me. I got popped for drinking underage or what, and then it just
Yeah.
snowballed from there. And so that learned a lot about myself being in prison for 3 months my
Oh
senior
man.
year of high school. But yeah, that was a little bit of how that relationship went down. Because he expected a lot.
Mm.
And I think that that's another one of the reasons why I kind of tried to go the other way. um and again, it's funny because after I went to college, that first semester I had a 1.7 GPA. I was double majoring in physics and engineering, which even in your first semester, you're not taking that many of those classes, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I quit. And now, in hindsight, a lot of kids that are double majors in physics and engineering might have a 1.7
Yeah.
GPA their first semester. But I quit and I called my dad and I was like, hey, coming home. No, you're not. You're not coming back to this house.
Oh whoa.
And I was like, okay, I didn't think that through, right? I never thought a step ahead. And so I ended up homeless or on a creek net in the North Georgia mountains. This is after your first semester ends in December, so it's winter time. And I fortunately I had a tent. I went and bought a heater, like a propane heater, and it was so cold at night it froze. and and so after about I finally got a job. So this job was 6 days a week, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., making $22,000 a year.
Nice.
And I mean, that was pennies. That was pennies,
Yeah.
even
Even
back
then.
in 2002 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And so after about 6 or 8 weeks of washing my hair in gas station sinks and brushing my teeth in a creek, I was like, dude, this is like not where I want to be with my life.
You're sleeping
I'm
outdoors. You're 6 to 8 weeks of sleeping in that creek bed.
Oh, so I slept out. I don't remember how long that was. So the people that hired me, I think they caught on
Yeah.
somehow. And so I started for maybe a week because I remember it being after Christmas time. They One of the guys traveled in from South Carolina and he had an apartment. And so, for about a week I slept there. But yeah, for about 6 weeks, I mean, I was just like
Sleeping out.
I was sleeping out and I mean like had zero money. Matter of fact, I was so broke. So my parents let me come home for Christmas. So I think I spent like 1 or 2 nights there that I ran out of gas in Roanoke, Alabama. Um and and so luckily there was a good Samaritan that, you know, helped me out because I was just walking down the road, and he helped me out. And that's how I got home. But yeah, broke, finally realized like, look, my parents raised me right and I haven't listened. I want to go back in the military because really I saw that I fell in love with it while I was there, but I really saw that as my only way out at the time too. Like I knew that I liked structure. And so I went to a recruiter and I was like, man, look, I want to go back to school. I want to be an officer. And, of course, I was a perfect candidate, right? And and since all that stuff had happened, me being in trouble, it was on my juvenile record. It didn't really hold any bearing. So, which was fortunate for me.
Yep.
So I call my pops. I was like, Dad, coming home, or Dad, going in the military. He said, okay, you can come home until basic training under conditions. You have to be no drinking. You have to be in by 7 p.m. No television. You have to read a book a week, write a book report on it, and you have to work out and run every single day. And he had a weekly calendar where he made me fill out the weekly plan. And then every day I would write what I actually did. And every evening he would actually sign off on it to make sure, for checks and balances. And he would grade my book reports. And and it was difficult at first because I was back home where I used to party. My friends, hey man, let's go X, Y, and Z, whatever. And I was like, dude, can't do it. But after about 3-4 weeks, I started just inundating myself in knowledge and learning and reading. I mean, I was reading way more than one book a week. I mean, I loved it, and I realized that I had a goal now, which was going in the military. I knew that that's where I wanted my career to be. And all of these things were helping me, and they did. There's no way that I could have had any more preparation than what my dad did for me. And it took me a while to realize that, look, I know my dad is different, but he's right. And I am wired the same way as him. It's just that I was wired and doing these things on an extreme scale that were not good for my my growth and my
Yep.
progress. And he kind of steered me the other way, and it helped me to find a purpose and a direction. And so all that supernova energy is now getting channeled into a purpose driven life. And so that's how I ended up going back to school, because this was the National Guard. And then I
You,
subsequently,
did you go back to that same college, or did you go to a different college?
same
Same
cause.
college. Okay.
Went back to North Georgia, and after basic training, my parents agreed that they would pay for school because I lost my scholarship. They would pay for school. And I'm sure there was something like if I quit, I had to pay it back or something like that. But
Right.
I stuck with it.
Right on. And so, um, when you dropped out the first time, you dropped out after one semester, was it like, hey, school's not my jam, or was it, I mean, you had a 1.7. It's not like you had a 0.9. I got some buddies that had sub 1.0s, And so, was it just like a choice thing? Like, I just don't enjoy school, or why did you drop out after that semester?
I think part of it too was that in ROTC, I got in trouble for drinking a couple times, and like they weren't going to kick me out because you couldn't, as a cadet. It was different, right? Like I would have had room arrest or something like that, like whatever.
Yeah.
And I think I didn't want to get in trouble again. I don't know. I'll be honest with you, Eric. I don't know what was going through my mind. Like I
Yeah.
had no plan
Yeah.
with what I was gonna do or anything. It's like I
Yeah.
dumb kid,
I got you. What's interesting, I have so there's a whole fatherhood theme there, and a whole area we could spend a lot of time talking about the fatherhood takeaways from that, right? Because I've raised children now. I've got, my daughter's 28, our son's gonna be 24, and I hang around with a lot of men that really are intentional about being good dads. Like they recognize this is a role in my life that is a priority, and they read about it, and they work hard at being good dads, and still they bump against the guardrails, and they feel like a failure a lot of the time, and they're trying to do all these things for their kids. And what I'm hearing, what comes out for me in your story a little bit is, man, you and your dad were on opposite polarities, right? You're living in a creek bed. He took a very hard line, like my son's screwing up, and I'm going to hold this hard line and say, I'm not opening my door back up for you. He knew you weren't in school. I don't know if he knew you were homeless. Do you know you're homeless? Did he?
Yeah. They knew I was a tough kid.
Yeah.
They, they,
And
you know.
so they're like, psh, he's holding a hard line with you, and yet you come around to understanding and coming back together with your dad. And so you came to this, and again, there's a massive part of your story still to go. but you came back around to, without him guiding you or leading you and soft handing you. I mean, he really took a very, and again, I'm not trying to advocate for leaving your kid in the woods, but the reality is it worked out, right? In terms of like you and your dad are close. You see, like I am my dad, and I was using my powers for evil instead of good. And now I see that I can use those same strengths to pursue growth and purpose and all these things. And it's a little bit of a, and I've said this before in our group meetings with our dads, like, and y'all are worried about being good dads and you're having these issues with your kids. How many of your dads do you think were in similar meetings as this one? And yet you all turned out to be rock stars. And they're like, none of our dads were in these types of, our dads weren't doing this kind of thing, right? Trying to figure out how to be better dads. And yet here we are. And so it's like, I think, I mean, to me, the takeaway is there is no perfect answer. Often, life is going to take your son or daughter in a variety of directions, despite your best intention. And some may stay directly in line with what you're guiding them to do, and others may go off into the woods for a while and then come back, and others may not come back. I mean, it's like it's so hard to predict. I think what we can do as dads is be best intention and work our tails off to be good dads, at the same time recognizing that it may not always be perfect. It's not going to be a straight path, right? It might be a very winding path to get back to where you maybe want it to be. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's life.
Yeah.
I don't fault my dad. I mean, and there were things that he could have done differently, but that was how he was raised. I mean, his mom did everything for the family because they were raised in that southern environment, and
Mm.
his mom was German too. So the mom, the wife, the matriarch does all of the house stuff, all of and that's kind of how my mom came to be. Like my dad, if my mom was out of town and my dad had to cook food, we were having frozen waffles, you know.
Right.
I mean, like that's just TV dinners. And but that was how he was raised. I mean, his father was the same way. I mean, when my grandmother passed away, my mom had to teach him how to do his laundry at 88.
Yeah.
I mean, that's wild. And
Yeah.
so those fatherly duties are a generational thing. And I think with us, it kind of got mixed into, now you look at our culture and the way that fathers were in that time, it doesn't, I think that's where there was a pull. But at the end of the day, I think it's just about loving your kids.
Hmm.
I mean, if you can show compassion and really, stay the course with providing for their growth, it's going to work out how it's supposed to. I mean,
Yeah.
one way
Yeah.
or
Yeah. Yeah.
another.
And I think ultimately there has to be that forgiveness element, right? It's like if I'm going to take this hard road with you, and I'm going to be like, no, here's the rules, and you go off into the wilderness and you're doing chaos, and I'm like, nope, here's the rules. But if you do come back, there has to be that I've got to welcome you with open arms, right? I've got to be here, and again, I'm saying it in very black and white terms, like you've got
Yeah,
to
yeah,
me, it's like having that limitless amount of forgiveness for, yes, when you do come back, I'm not going to hold it against you that you went off the rails and into the woods. And in fact, if you go again and you come back again, I'm gonna welcome you, right? The reality is I think, forgiveness is a key thing for all of us. We all need forgiveness,
yeah,
all
yeah,
need
yeah.
compassion, and having that for our children, despite their stupid decisions or chaos or things that they involve, because we all have made our own choices, right? We all made our own stupid decisions through life, and we all need some amount of forgiveness and grace and mercy and all that. So all right, so let's jump into the Army, man. So you've gone through school, you have your degree, and you've gone through basic, and so now you go to the Army, or how does that work?
No, so I joined the National Guard because at the time in Georgia, you could do it's called simultaneous membership. And so you can be enlisted in the Guard and then you can go active duty Army after you graduate. So I was actually in the National Guard, but I hadn't contracted yet to commission because I wasn't at that stage. So while I was back in school, and let me, I'll back up. What my dad did for me while I was at basic training, I fell in love. I found I've found a different way to find your purpose now after, we'll talk about mine getting stripped away. I excelled in the military. I loved the challenge. Purpose is an understatement with what I found in the military. And so being at the University of North Georgia and following that path, that was everything to me. And so in 2000, I guess it would have been 2004, we got orders, my brigade, the Georgia National Guard, to deploy to Iraq. And so I was probably maybe a late sophomore in college. And so in May 2005, after we trained up, we shipped out. And so our my unit was stationed in an area known as the Triangle of Death.
Oh,
So for that period of time, from like 2004 to 2007, 2008, it was just intense violence. And so
heavy fighting.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, our second day in, we call it in country, at our operating base, we got shelled by mortars. And it was kind of, it was welcoming, right? And but they also, the enemy wants to see how the new guys are going to react.
Yeah.
And but I will say, when something like that happens, when you have incoming fire, you're taught, run to a bunker and you stay there until the all clear is given. The second or third round hit two tents down from mine, and one of the toughest things we've ever had to do was stay there and listen to screams, because you can't leave that bunker, because now you're just going to be another casualty, another guy that needs triage. And so we also knew that as soon as the all clear was given, it was our platoon's job to go get the guys, because we had the technology that would, a counter directional coordinate.
Yeah.
And so we knew where it was coming from. And so as soon as the all clear was given, we ran to our tent, grabbed our gear, and took off towards our vehicles. And we had to run through the carnage of that tent, blood on the ground, on the tent. At least one guy was killed, and another one I'd actually see at Walter Reed after I
Mm.
lost my arm. But we all hopped in the vehicles and we took off towards the objective. And I hear Ingram take point. And second day in country, and this was my dream, right? I wanted this. We had trained for this, and my heart was beating so fast. We're in this open field. Now you don't know. So everything I just saw as a 21-year-old kid, never seen blood like that before, never heard screams like that before. And now we have to go carry out a mission and remember our training and do everything that we have. Well, now I'm worried about, okay, stepping on a mine, taking more incoming fire, sniper fire, or getting into a firefight, right? And everybody else was too. I mean, we're all 18, 19, 21-year-old kids. Everybody executed flawlessly. So what you have basically in that kind of situation is a battle drill, and it's considered a react to contact. We know where we're going, but we don't know exactly where the enemy is. We're just, in a sense, walking until we find
Patrolling.
something.
Yeah. Yeah. Patrolling contact.
And yeah, exactly. And but I saw some guys, and which idiots. I don't know what they were still doing there, but we ended up capturing these dudes. And so the way that it works is you ended up turning it into another battle drill once you receive contact. And so our unit being the front, we laid down what's called a support by fire position, and then the team that was behind us came up and had a flanking position across, and then we were able to envelop these guys. And so we caught two of them. And what I have to say about that is the only reason that was able to be accomplished was because we had trained it flawlessly. It was a battle drill. And no matter what kind of, anxiety, emotions, butterflies, scared shitless was going on, we executed flawlessly. And that is exactly what I try and do in my life. And so, I have a framework that I term raw resilience that helps me resiliently posture. And that's one of my messages, is that I talk about resiliently posturing. And it's a battle drill that you have to train regularly to raise your emotional threshold. So when those challenges occur, you can stay within that emotional threshold. You don't have the low lows, and we don't want the high highs either, but it
Right.
has to be trained. and that one thing, that one event of going through that process, it emboldened my sense of purpose in the military. And so for me, after that, I volunteered for every single mission that I could. I mean, we went on, set up sniper, we call them observation posts, uh, all kind of reconnaissance and whatnot. And so, like, I wanted to fight. Like, that's why you know, that's why I joined.
Yeah.
And so, when 3 months after that first mission, I was in a 4 vehicle patrol and I was the gunner. So this was back before we had the mine
Armored.
resistant.
Hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we are just in Humvees, right? And
Was
so
this the
half my
thin skin Humvee? So nothing or
so we were the first brigade. We had up armored Humvees. But so it was only, let's see, it was only on the doors.
mm,
I think.
yeah.
I can't remember because some guys we still had sandbags in the floorboards. But they were up armored, but it was the first generation. So
Right. So not
anyways,
mine resistant, nothing on the bottom. Yep.
yeah, yeah. So, um, you know, I was a gunner, and I think we're in that triangle. I think we were going in between Ludafia and Yusufia, and I'm the rear gunner on a 50 caliber machine gun. And man, I mean, I was every mission. I just tried to stay so locked in, right? Just thumbs on a butterfly trigger of that machine gun. Again, I think by this point, I'm 22 years old. Just, I mean, that's a lot of power, a
Yeah.
lot of power. Just heads on a swivel, checking between my left right limits. And to me it was, hey, look, I empowered myself. Like, the rear is mine. I got to protect my guys. Like, I'm not letting anything pass us. And we all try to think like that, because if everybody can think like that, man, like, you got a good team. But the fight didn't happen, how I envisioned. And my vehicle struck a roadside bomb. We call them IEDs, improvised explosive device. And being a gunner, the likelihood of surviving that is next to nothing because you're exposed.
Mm.
And the bomb through my vehicle catapulted us into a roll. And I just remember saying, "Lights out, say a prayer. Lights out, say a prayer," because I knew I was gonna die. And when I hit the ground, I mean, it was almost like I was in a dream. Like, I could not believe I survived it, and I wasn't in any pain. I mean, I felt invincible. And I look up and I see my driver, 18-year-old kid named Spottiswood, unconscious in the passenger seat of the vehicle. And so when I went to move towards him, that's when I felt pain in my arm. But it was just kind of achy, like I'd broken it, right? And so when I went to feel for the brake and kind of cradle my arm, my hand just missed where my forearm should have been. And when I looked down, my forearm was just lying on the ground, connected to a piece of tissue no bigger than your pinky finger. And blood, of course, is everywhere. So now I'm back into that. I'm about to die and bleed out. And I just remember, like, I'm not fucking dying here. And so I picked my arm up and I ran with it. And I just started, and luckily we weren't in a firefight. We had some small arms fire, but that was it. And I just started kicking the Humvee door, and Spottiswood, again, just a flawless action that had been trained repeatedly, put a tourniquet on and saved my life.
Mm.
And I remember sitting by that Humvee, and one of my best friends came over, Paul Saylor, and he held my hand the entire time. And, just to go show, like, he should have been pulling security, but that's how much, we cared for each other. And
Yeah.
he held my hand. And then when the helicopter came, they put me on a stretcher. And once I get in, he let go of my hand and he said, "All right, you're gonna be all right, man. I'll see you soon." And he was killed a month later.
Mm.
And that was rough, but that was the environment that we were in, and that is war.
Mm.
And so yeah, that's the story up to the point of how that happened. Um, so I, It's not difficult to talk about, but it brings up, you know, what my life was like before that and how much I enjoyed the military. Because when I remember waking up in Baghdad, being wheeled into the hospital room on a gurney, and I rolled over and, you know, groggily see my limb wrapped in bandages, and I closed my eyes and tried not to cry.
Yeah.
Everything that I identified with was gone. My purpose that I had worked so hard for my entire life of chasing air, getting in trouble because I had nothing, no purpose, no identity, no clue where I was going for 18 years of my life. And I finally found it, finally found everything, something that I was good at, something I identified with. It was completely stripped away, and I was back at nothing. And, you know, that's tough, very, very tough. And I know that some people think that even now, like, you know, you don't have to lose your arm to think that way, to think that things have been stripped away from you. um and so I know the difficulty there for
Man.
sure.
Wow, man, that's an incredible story. I appreciate you sharing that. Your unit. So you were in country for 4 months when all that happened. So your
Yeah,
first
they're about.
deployment about 4 months, and then you're back at through Baghdad back to Walter Reed. Or did you go to Germany? Did you go to Germany? Probably.
I did actually. I went to, well, I guess I've been lunch stool maybe.
Hmm. And
So
yep. And then so did you spend some time there recovering there, and then before going to Walter Reed, or pretty much just shipped right through?
yeah, pretty much. So let's see. I was injured on July 20th, 2005, and I arrived Walter Reed July 22nd.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, and they said, and they told me, they were like, well, "You better be glad that you're very physically fit because your body has stabilized, you know, very quickly." Because most of the time amputees would have to maybe stay in Germany for a week because they can't put you on a plane
Right.
if you're unstable. Um, so so yeah, I had a pretty quick transition back to the States.
Right on. And so you're in Walter Reed, and what's the mindset now? Is it like, I mean, what are you're there, you're 20, what, 2 years old, 23
I
years?
just turned 22 on July 3rd. Yeah. So, um, you know, it's what am I going to do now? Like,
Yeah.
because and that's the issue. If you don't dig deep in finding your purpose, and because I always say that's the first thing you have to do if you're looking to really develop personally, professionally, whatever it is, but growth, transformational growth starts with your purpose. Who do you want to be? You know, what take inventory of what you have, and then what steps you need to get there. And that's kind of how you can mold your purpose, but it can't be the surface purpose. So mine was like, I'm a soldier. Okay, well, you're one bomb away from not being a soldier. Then what are you gonna do? You know, I'm a runner. I'm one jacked up knee from not being a runner.
Mm.
You got to dig a lot deeper than that. And so, you know, that's one of the things that I've learned. But I'll tell you how it all kind of started, because my mentality at the time for the first few days was, I'm going to be another statistic, another homeless veteran asking for your money, on the street corner, you know. And fortunately for me, I had a great support network. And when I arrived at Walter Reed, my mom was waiting for me in the hospital room, and she had my fly rod.
Mm.
And of all things, because that was another thing. I mean, I love fly fishing. For me, being on a mountain stream is where what other people would consider a sanctuary
Yeah,
of
sure.
God for
Right. Yeah.
them. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so, but my mom had brought that fly rod of her way as her way of saying life doesn't have to change for you. And so, of course, I didn't really understand that. But a couple days later, my cousin's like, "Hey, let's go take this thing out to the front lawn, and let's just see what we can do." I'm sure people thought I was escaping, right? Because I'm still like in gym shorts, and I have probably about 4 tubes coming out of me with an IV tree, and it's like, where is that guy going? And so we get out the fly ride, and it wasn't long before I started crying. because one other thing that I identified with had been taken away. I couldn't do it. And my cousin comes over to me and he's like, let's just keep trying. Let's see how we can do this. There has to be a way. And we stayed out there and I channeled all that anger and all that frustration. And I figured out that I could use my teeth to strip line. Cause fly
Oh,
rod
yeah.
is not like a bait caster where
Right.
and then you can hold it under your arm or
Right.
whatever. And so I used my teeth to strip line and I could manipulate my cast with my two fingers. And I almost started crying again because I was so ecstatic. Like, hold on a second. My mindset changed completely. I mean, my view on everything went from what am I going to do now to whatever it takes. I
Mm.
will keep moving forward. And so for me, that period of time from when I lost my arm to figuring that out was brief. Other people may have a tougher time getting to that point because their trauma, albeit the end state is relative and we go through the same things, the time that it takes, like stress in your life, making the sales, you haven't put in it, nobody's accepting your calls, whatever. Over time, the anxiety that you start to feel takes its physical toll, and the end state is the same as what I had. However, all of that negativity for those type of individuals has built up over time and is tougher to get out of than mine, because that period of time I was in a very vulnerable state and I was fortunate enough to have that support network that kind of helped show me the way during that time. And so it wasn't long after that. I mean, as soon as I got my tubes off, I signed up for the Army 10 miler, which was in that would have been the beginning of October, I think. And I remember I still had bandages on my limb. I went out and I ran this thing, and a guy comes up to me, name's Dave Roselle, just a great dude. He was kind of a mentor. He lost his ankle in 2003, I think. And he asked me, he's like, dude, you didn't have a bad run at the Army Timar. Do you want to be on my triathlon team? And I'm like, hmm. My first thing was I thought about Bruce Jenner because I didn't exactly know what triathlon was, but as soon
Right.
as I took
Thinking
Latin in fourth
decathlete.
grade, yeah, I was like, I'm not gonna throw spears, am I? I took Latin in fourth grade, so I knew it meant three. But Dave was like, look, man, swim, bike, run. And so, I'm like, dude, riding your bike is something you do to your friend's house when you're 12. And
Right.
how am I not gonna swim in circles or sink? But I was like, you know what? Fuck it, man. I'm in. And that decision to join that triathlon team was really the catalyst and turning point in my life. And through that journey, that's what set my rehabilitative progress and just in a completely different trajectory.
Right on.
And that's why I continue to this day to use endurance sports as maintenance of emotional stability.
Pardon the interruption, everyone. Do you ever feel like you're out of alignment with your true gifts, your passion, and your purpose for being on this earth? Do you feel like you're grinding it out each week with the appearance of success and still asking, is this it? If so, I get it. I've been right where you're at. And once I figured it out for myself, it's why I started coaching. Now I help my clients get back into alignment with their authentic self. I help them find meaning, purpose, joy, and energy in each day. Check out my website at ericsardina.com to learn more and to schedule a free 15-minute strategy session. And now, back to the show. Right on. So that's I did triathlon in the early 2000s, kind of into that, probably '04 to, I think I did my last one was probably in '08, '09, somewhere, I think '09, somewhere out in there. But so loved the sport of triathlon, did a lot of them, did a lot of sprint Olympic, worked my way up to half Ironman. And so appreciate the mental work that it takes to do a triathlon.
Right. Yeah.
I was initially an endurance runner, and then when you factor in all the different things that triathlon requires beside just running and transition and all that. And yet you think of it, when I think about it as an adaptive athlete, right, where you're having to figure out, like, I got to ride a bike with one arm. I can't put two hands on the hoods or two elbows in the aero bars, and I got to swim. I mean, how did all that, you got a million more things to figure out as you step into a new sport than just, than someone who's got four limbs and all that. So what was that like for you?
Well, so again, I was trying to redefine myself. So, before I lost my arm, I was in a fixed mindset. And I think Carol Dweck in her book Mindset explains it perfectly, that, and we all know the difference between fixed and growth mindsets, but her book is just so beautifully written and going into the science behind it. But before I lost my arm, I knew what I was good at. I knew that I was good at lifting weights. I was good at running. I would Had Dave asked me to be on his triathlon team and I had all my appendages, I probably would have said no, because I didn't want other people that had me on a pedestal for things that I knew I was good at see me fail at something,
Mm.
which no one would have cared. Like, I respect people more. I respect the failure. Like, and which is how, after I lost my arm, I got into a growth mindset, and I didn't even know what that was,
Yeah.
at the time. And so, I always tell the story of, when I was in middle school, I decided in sixth grade I was going to join the triathlon team, or I'm sorry, not triathlon, the swim team. And I
Mm.
was so terrible. Everybody would always be waiting on me at the end of the pool before I got done. I'd see the flags,
Yeah.
thank God. And I mean,
I know that
my,
feeling, man,
yeah,
so
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Swimming, man.
And,
Whew. It's rough
and
for a runner.
And the pool was like right down the road from my house. My mom would have taken me anytime. I mean, I could have ridden my bike down there, my little Trek 12 speed, but I quit. I quit because I saw all these other people that I thought were talented and I'd never get to where they were. And I didn't realize that effort trumps talent every single time.
Mm.
And there is nothing that is going to set us apart more than hard work and showing up. And so the next time that I would get into the pool, and there's a story behind it, which I'll keep, it's better told in person, because it's more, there's some,
It's
anyways,
visual.
there's some, yeah, it's very visual. But anyway, so I get to the pool for the first time, and the only lane that's open it's a double lane where they took out the rope, and for all the 110-year-olds doing the pool noodle exercises,
Right.
and because all the other lanes were full of real swimmers,
Mm.
right? and and so here I am, I show up with this speedo that my ass is eating, and I get in the pool and I take off, and I can't make it the entire distance of the length of the pool without busting out into a doggy paddle breaststroke.
Yeah.
I'm thinking I'm right back in middle school. Like, how the fuck am I going to do this? The difference now was I didn't quit. I just kept moving forward. I kept going. I didn't want to let Dave down. He had asked me to do this, and I was redefining myself. I didn't know, any different.
Mm.
I had no idea where I was going, but this at least was a positive thing. When I started cycling, everybody waited on me at the stop signs. It was embarrassing. I
Mm.
was used to being on the strong bench, I
Yeah.
was used to being at the front of the pack. It was embarrassing, but I kept showing up every single day. And before I knew it, I was racing across the country in triathlon. No longer was I being waited on at the stop signs. I was waiting on people, and I was glad to do it, because
Mm.
those people counted on me to push them, to drive them. And so that's everything changed for me in that growth mindset, because I wanted to fail. Let me push it just a little bit more. Let me keep going. And so I also, I tell this story about, have you heard of the Escape from Alcatraz out in
Oh
San
yeah.
Francisco? Yeah,
Oh
yeah, yeah.
yes. That race. Heck yeah. Yep.
And so I did it a couple years actually, but as a relay one year. And so our swimmer, phenomenal swimmer. I think she used to be a Paralympic swimmer, and a runner, just a great dude. And I was a cyclist. And so, the cyclist is in the middle. And the swimmers, they all get on a boat and they take into Alcatraz and they jump off the boat and swim into the shore.
Jump into
And
50-degree water. Yeah.
yeah,
With a
oh man,
current.
and you hit that current wrong,
Yeah, man. You're going
but
out to sea.
they put all the gimps with the fat because they stage it to where the pros are going to be with the good current, and they put the gimps with them, so hopefully they don't like get out eaten by a shark on the
Right.
on the other side of the bridge. But anyways, Melissa, regardless, it wouldn't matter. She was amazing. She would have crushed it no matter the current or not. But so she comes in to transition after she just killed the swim. And I hop on my bike and I start to exit transition. My brake cable snap. I have just flown from Atlanta, Georgia to San Francisco. We were doing great. And now what do I do? And the volunteer looks at me like, what are you gonna do? And I remember looking back at her and I was like, fuck it. And I hopped on my bike and I fucking took off. And
No break.
no brakes. I had zero brakes. I'm in San Francisco, nothing but undulating terrain, nothing but undulating elevation. And I ended up beating, I remember looking at the times. Now, grant you, I only did the cycling portion, but I ended up beating 30 professionals.
Wow.
And and I don't say that to my own horn, but I say that because the metaphor there and the point of the story is that the only way that you can transform and grow is by releasing your limitations and taking your brakes off. And first, we have to identify what we're scared of, and then we have to go do that. And we have to seek that discomfort. Now, I didn't realize all that at the time, but having that mindset that shifted me, that's how I showed up. That's how I showed up. I wasn't going to let my team down. I flew out here. I had a goal of doing this race. I'm going to fucking do it. And so I hopped on. I used my feet to brake when I needed to. I had holes in my shoes, but had I
Cycling shoes
not,
too. So these aren't like tennis shoes. These are hard
uh,
bottom clip shoes, right? You're putting that down on pavement to stop.
yeah. So you got to unclip your shoes when you want
Yeah.
to stop and then try and,
And it's like
you
putting an
know,
ice skate on the pavement. So it's not exactly a grippy surface. It's not a grippy shoe that's
yeah.
going to actually slow you down.
Eric, it was brutal,
You have to be
but
throwing sparks out the back, you know?
at the same time though, had I not done that, I would have never learned what I did about my cycling abilities. Turning at high speeds, going downhill as fast as I did. Normally, if I'm over 30 miles an hour, like I'm like holding onto the brakes, like I'm scared because I only have one arm. I don't have the
Right.
same support as everyone else. Well, I didn't have the option to brake, and so that's why I think for us to transform, we have to get into uncomfortable situations and continue to strive through that uncomfortability. And once it gets comfortable, make it uncomfortable again. Just like me getting in the pool with the 110-year-olds doing their pool noodle exercise. Like that's uncomfortable. That sucks just because I'm now, I think everybody's looking at me like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm one of the 110-year-olds.
Yeah.
Um, so anyways, that's my challenge to everybody is you have got to find discomfort to transform. Like that there's only that's the path.
For sure. And, I love that mindset that you share, Rich. And, the idea of, I think of it in terms of often when something bad, quote unquote, bad happens to us, it's easy to fall quickly into that victim mentality of like, why did that have to happen? Because it's not the vision we had for ourselves, right? It's not the plan we had. So it's like, why?
Right.
As
Right.
opposed to, how do I take this thing and make it good? How do I take this and turn it into something positive? How do I take this and help somebody else through my effort or experience or whatever? Like this challenge has been thrown at me. Okay, what do I do with it? Like how do I use it as opposed to that more petulant response of, oh doggone it, why has this got to happen to me? Like this isn't what I
Right.
wanted. And it's about that mindset. It starts with the mind. And I love that, to grow. Growth is hard, man, right? I mean, growth is hard. It requires uncomfortableness. You think about even simple metaphors like a caterpillar. If you ever watch a caterpillar coming out of its shell to become a butterfly, it's gnarly, dude. I mean, that thing is working its tail off to get out of that shell. But if it doesn't do that work, it doesn't transform and become something that it never was before,
That is an interesting metaphor. And you bring up a good point too of don't lose the opportunities right? Because there's a lot of opportunity in negative things. A lot of times in uh, a lot of times I bring up this example in that some of us we get into these anxious times where we don't think we're cut out for it. We bit off more than we can chew, or things just aren't going the way that we thought they would. Those emotions are serving a purpose. Don't, because I've curled up in the fetal position on the couch. I mean, many times. But now what I try and do is I have a composition notebook and just, old school, carry it everywhere. I have a stack of them. And so whenever this happens to me, I don't let that opportunity go away. I try to meditate if I can or do some breathing. And then I immediately say, okay, what am I feeling right now? This is what I'm feeling. And so, whether that's physical, mine comes in physical, but also, I'm feeling that, no self-worth, or I'm going to let my kids down, I'm going to let my family down, my boss, whatever those emotions, whatever the thoughts are. Okay, why am I feeling this way? Well, because I haven't made any sales. I haven't, you know no callbacks or follow-ups or whatever. And then the third one is, okay, well, what is your plan, and are you accomplishing or executing the way that you lined your plan out? So what are the things that you're doing right now? So, and in doing that, you've either confirmed that you are on the course, and okay, all right, cool. And the fourth step is positive affirmations. I completely believe in filling your head with positive things. Because most of the times we tell ourselves bullshit, and that's what we become. It's all a lie. You're not. Everybody's in this together. Like, you are a great human. And so, but in that third step, we either confirm that, hey, man, we're on the path, or, you know what? There's some other things that maybe I could be doing. Now, don't change your course right now. Wait until you're out of this emotional state to go back to, your plan and say, okay, I need to start moving forward here. That works 100% of the time to get you out of that funk. And what you just identified is, I just took and I don't call it a negative emotion, but negative experience. And I didn't let it go. I turned it into a catalyst for growth. And that tactic, that tool has worked wonders for me. Because we're never out of the woods. I mean, I have PTSD, I have anxiety often. And so don't lose out on the opportunity, because there's always something that you can do with those, that, whether it be a traumatic event or negative activity, whatever the adversity is.
Uh, I love that. It's reframing, and it's not labeling that negative thing as a negative, right? It's just
Right.
kind of thinking of it in terms of like, how am I going to take this experience, though I could label it negative? How am I going to use this as the next cornerstone that builds towards something new that I never could have imagined, right? That's
Yes.
going to be the impetus that starts a new transformation, that turns me in a direction that I couldn't have planned, right? And enables me to touch people that I never would have been able to touch. You think about the impact that you're having now, given what you've gone through. You're impacting a whole new group of people that you never could have impacted
That's right.
had you not gone through the fire that you've gone through, right? And there's power in that. Um, let's talk about, so you're competing now. You're doing triathlon. I imagine that story continues on the Army triathlon team. At what point do you start thinking, man, I can't go back to combat because the rules won't allow me, and I'm gonna maybe work on changing that? Like, talk about that, when that mindset started to come up for you.
So, I went back to college after my time at Walter Reed, same school, University of North Georgia, and I continued to do triathlon. And I I started to notice, like, well, first off, I got an internship with a state senator in the Capitol, in Atlanta, Georgia, and but I started to notice while I was doing these triathlons that I'm competing against able-bodied people. Now, I was still a horrible swimmer. Like, dude, I'm gonna tell you, any race, because Challenge Athletes Foundation, they set up Operation Rebound, and they were a huge component for my growth. I mean, they sponsored me, sent me all over America to do these things, but I'd always agree to do the ones that were in cold water with the downstream river, a downstream swim, because I could wear, like the thickest 5 millimeter thick wetsuit where you
Right.
just float,
Buoyant.
and then yeah, and I mean, swimming in the Hudson, all you got to do is just push the dead bodies out of the way, and
Right.
you're at the finish line. And but nonetheless, I'm competing against able-bodied people, and I'm like, man, if I can do this, why can't I go back in the military? And so my senator John Douglas, he asked me, he said, "What are you going to do when you get out?" And I said, "Well, my counselor we're looking at Merrill Lynch and some other, because my undergrad was in finance, but I really want to go back in the military." And he was like, Within a matter of weeks, he took me to Washington D.C., and I was sitting in front of a retired general that was on President Bush's staff, and he said, "Hey, resubmit your packet, uh, get back into ROTC." And I was already in ROTC at the time, but I was taking semester off for to do this internship. And he said, "We're gonna follow it. If you can meet the standard, there's no reason why you shouldn't get in." I was like, okay. So I got back into ROTC, I did everything. The craziest thing happened. So when the way that you commission and graduate college on the same day. So literally you walk across the stage, and then you take off your gown, and
Gown.
they commission you, and um and uh and well, I didn't find out I was going to commission until the night before. My sergeant major called me, and all my family was in town. He was like, "Hey, Rich, you got it, man. We're in." But a couple weeks before that, I get a phone call from a guy that says, "Dude, why didn't you tell me you were doing this? I'm aide de camp to the general that has to sign off on your final paperwork for the waiver that you need, um, to commission." That guy who called me at that time was the same guy that asked me to be on his triathlon team when I was at Walter Reed.
Oh, oh wow.
And yeah, right. And so, and we've talked about this before, whether you believe in God or believe that the stars were aligned, like there's some kind of energy working there that like
Yeah.
this is my path. And and I truly believe I was kept alive for a reason, because I mean, I owe so much and look, Dave didn't sign the paperwork. I know that, but I'm sure he put in a word for me. And but at the end of the day, I mean, for those things to align the way they
Mm.
did, but
Unbelievable.
I have always said, we opened that policy back up to where, you could be an amputee and go through that process. Um, but you have to meet a standard. Like, I'm not an advocate for making, you're missing a leg or an arm and you can't meet the standard. I'm not going to advocate for you.
Right.
And I think that that's fine. I mean, I think anybody should serve, whether you're a male, female, you want to go into combat arms, whatever. Transgender, I could care less. You want to go fight for your country and be next to your brothers and sisters in arms. There is no more honorable profession in the world than being able to do that. Who are we to tell someone that they can't do that if they can meet the standard? And so, I have a strong stance on that. But I met the standard, and I got commissioned as an engineer officer and went on to serve 3 more tours.
Man, so all right, so you're going to redeploy now to a combat zone. So your last experience in combat zone ended with you getting medevaced out of there. What was that experience like for you? Did you go back to Iraq first off, or did you
I
go to
did.
Afghanistan? And then what was that like going back to combat?
I went back to Iraq. We, I didn't really see anything that I'd seen in 2005.
What year would this have been?
So this was in 2009 when I went back. So 2009 to 2010. And, it was a little odd at first, right? I mean, like, man, you're back. Um, but I also think, man, in a sense, like I wanted to chase that fight. I wanted vengeance, and uh
Yeah.
and and it didn't happen, and that's fine. The theater of war had really settled down at that point. I think we ran into a couple of IEDs. That's it. No firefights, no casualties while I was there. And so, some people I guess would say that's a good deployment,
Yeah.
but not I don't know. I was
Not what
looking
you
for something
wanted.
different there. Yeah. And I think that my second time in as an officer was not as productive mentally as it was before, because I had a goal. Like I wanted, yes, I wanted to be an officer. I wanted to lead men and women, but I also wanted to be in specialty units. And that was just kind of, that didn't materialize for me. And, and it's still kind of tough on me. I wanted to be in range battalion. I wanted to be in Delta. Um, and it didn't happen. And I knew that those were the guys, like, these are the guys who see action. These are the guys that, like, I can provide some value. And I think I kind of got a negative, like a chip on my shoulder almost, when that didn't materialize. And I look back on that and I feel kind of poorly about it. But it is what it is. I can't change the past. It turned me into what I am now. My third deployment, it was amazing. Even though I was in a non-combat role, I was basically a program manager for a horizontal construction unit. Learned so much. Had some of the best junior leaders, and I probably learned more about leadership on that tour than any other deployment that I had been on. How to reciprocate leadership as well, from bottom up, top down. It was just an amazing tour. And then my third deployment was just fun. I was the captain and I was basically given complete autonomy, and I was running around blowing stuff up. We would I was teaching infantry guys how to, you know, uh C4, like putting weapons caches. And I mean, I remember me and this first sergeant pulled an idea out of the ground. Like, we should not have done that at all. And I still kind of get scared saying that, like I'm going to get in trouble. Um, but you have to wait on
Right.
the explosive ordnance detachment. We're trying to, like, build this road. I'm like, man, fuck this. Like, I'll just teach you guys. And I'll never forget, like, I told the infantry commander, I was like, hey, look, I need some more C4. And so he calls Afghans, and the Afghan gets out of his Ford Ranger smoking a joint with a box of C4, which C4 is not, like, it'll just burn. You could put the cigarette out. Now, if you force, because it takes force for it to go off, then that would be a little different. But it was just the funniest scene. I mean, this blazed Afghan soldier
Carrying a box of C4.
before just burning one down, man. And but anyways, that was my fourth deployment, and it was a lot of fun. And but again, it was tough. When I got off that plane, I did not I got sent back early to go to a course, and I didn't really have much of a transition. And I came from fifth gear to first gear, and I ended up getting into a bar fight. Um and in Columbus, Georgia. Was it Columbus? Yeah. It was Columbus, because we were hunting down at Fort Benning. And before I had to be there. And I don't know, I don't even remember. It doesn't matter what the guy was saying or how the fight happened, but, like, Josh slammed this dude's head into a bar table, and and just walked out of the bar. And the cops, I walked out after the guy. That's what happened. And the cops came, and they're like, hey, man, look, it's over. Stop chasing the guy. Just leave. We're not taking you to jail. Like, they knew. The bouncer told them what happened. Like, we're not taking you to jail. Like, you're good. But I kept pushing it. And then I tried to go back in the bar. I was like, but you can't go back in the bar. I was like, no, I'm going back in the bar. I mean, these cops were so cool. And the cop grabbed me. I turned around and headbutted him.
Oh,
And it's
oh
like,
man.
all of this, that I had gotten away from, back in the day, it was like coming to surface. And I think it was just those emotions of, I was wanting something else that wasn't happening. So now I was back in this position of, okay, where am I going? Right? What is this purpose? And yeah, I ended up getting thrown in the slammer, and everything got dropped. I talked to the police officer and apologize. And everything. I mean, and by the way, I was in the back of the cop car with my prosthetic on. It took four cops. I don't know where the strength came from. I remember they were like, dude, what is up with this guy? And I was laughing and hammer drunk. And I get in the back of the cop car, and I busted out the window of the
With your
cop car,
prosthetic.
with my prosthetic, and they're like, well, we don't I remember what I'm saying, like, how do we cuff that? Um and so they made I don't remember what happened. They made me take it off. But yeah, I mean, embarrassing, complete lack of positive behavior as an officer. And I almost got kicked out. Almost got kicked out.
Yeah.
And but I think that experience told me that it's time for something else. Like, if this is what this psyche is you know leading you to do, this isn't what you should be doing. You served your purpose, you went back, you accomplished the goal. It's time to find something else. And I did get an honorable discharge. It was not court martial or anything like that, but I think all of our experiences serve a purpose.
Mm.
And but again, I wouldn't change any of this. I
Yeah.
mean, it has in the last 5 years, I have just taken all of these experiences and really been able to turn them into something positive.
Right
and
on.
and I keep it raw, man. I'm not trying to hide anything.
Right on. I love what
Um
you said earlier too about the fragility of it. Like we're all, we all need sort of to be on, be aware, be on guard, recognize that you're never really out of the fight, right? In terms of like,
right,
you
yeah.
can always backfall, you can always slip back, and we've got to be on guard, got to have discipline, got to focus around mission and purpose. And am I doing the things that are keep me on that path, or am I doing things that are taking me off that path? We never really fully come through and like, okay, I'm solid as a rock, good to go. No,
Yeah.
you've got to be on guard for and look for like, okay. And I think it was awesome that you kind of recognized, whether it was in the moment or in hindsight, to go, if I'm getting into bar fights, this is probably what I'm doing right now is not the right, is putting me in the right mindset that I need to stay doing this. There's got to be
Right.
something else I need to transition to. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about leaving the military, and then sort of what sort of happens, because you go to work for Fortune 500 and then some business
Yeah.
stuff. Where's your life take you then?
So, one, it was really bittersweet to leave the military because I really did love it. And I think, you know, maybe I was cut out to be an enlisted guy because you see a lot more being in the fight, whatever. Again, can't change anything in the past, but it was a tough transition. When I was in the military, I chased deployments. I wanted to go and so find a fight, so to speak. So I didn't really know anything else as far as that having a different work ethic. So I was kind of like a light switch. Again, I mean, that's the same way my dad was, right? So he and I are a lot alike in that manner. And so I went to work for a company called Kinder Morgan.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Love Kinder Morgan to this day. I mean, and they are really military friendly. So if there's any listeners that are transitioning, look for those guys because
Oil and
it
gas pipeline company, kind of midstream company.
midstream. So I was in the terminals part, right? So we were tank batteries, almost at the lowest level of the midstream, and so I served multiple positions there, from running maintenance for different terminals, operations of uh, multiple terminals, and so um, I loved it. I really loved it, but I was putting in some work, and I had a salary. And when I met my wife, she was like, "Look, if we're gonna have a family, it's gonna be really difficult. You working this much, and you have a cap salary."
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, like, it made sense. I was happy there, but I had no life outside of that, right? I mean, it was, and so that's why I threw in the towel there. I figured out that I didn't want to continue that way. And so my wife was a State Farm insurance agent. And so I decided to start my own insurance agency, but an independent. And so I
Yep.
started from zero, property and casualty. And it didn't take me long at all to figure out I would rather cut off my right arm than sell insurance. Here I am coming from, there's just
Very
other
different worlds.
very different worlds. And I mean, a lot of the processes are relative across the board. You follow a process, you will be successful. If you can train your people, if you can lead your people correctly and provide for them and give them the resources, morale, it doesn't matter if you're selling insurance or you're running a pipeline. I mean, that's just,
Yeah.
that's what you got to do. And, but it, when it came time, the opportunity presented itself, and I sold and got out of that, a few years back. And, but during that time, that's when I really got back into running. And because I was nervous about running, I had injured my leg, and while I was in the military, and I was having some issues, keeping up with that. I think that's another thing that kind of, I wasn't able to stay at the front as much. And so I think that's another thing that hurt me. But at one point, my daughter, the only daughter I had at the time, she called the couch my bed, because I was unhealthy, man. Just, stay up till midnight, getting the last dip of Copenhagen in, eating fast food. And that's not who I was. I mean, I ran my 2 mile time was under 11 minutes. I was a fast guy. And, and that's when I decided, you know what? I don't care how much this leg hurts me. Like, fuck it. I'm going to figure it out. And I just started going and going and going. And next thing you know, I'm like, man, I need to sign up for a race. This is not, it's good, but it's not, there's a limit, right? Because if you're just running, you're really a hamster without some kind of ambitious target. And so I signed up for a 50K. And
That's ambitious.
yeah, I went from
Trail
couch
race
to 50K.
and
Oh yeah.
50K trail race, not a
Yeah,
road race. Yeah.
Mountain Mist 50K in Huntsville, Alabama. And amazing. If there's any runners out there, check that out. I kind of want to keep it hush just so there's not a wait list. But anyways, check it out. It's amazing. The race director's an amazing guy. But yes, like, I think like 5,000 feet of elevation. But it's so rocky. And like on that technical terrain, I mean, if you're just doing 5,000 feet of elevation on dirt, man, that's not really that bad. But as soon as you introduce like jagged rocks for half the race, I mean, that does so much to your muscles. And so, anyways, that at that point in time, that's where when I started doing that, I realized that, you know what, and my purpose started to shift. And that's when I found out, like, okay, I am truly a leader, and I'm a motivator. I'm not, I want to go out, because after I lost my arm, before I went back in, I was being asked to speak at these different places and asked to do all these different things. And once I decided I was going to go back in, I told all those folks that were asking me to do these things, like, I'm not doing this anymore. I don't want to be in the limelight. And what I failed to realize is that nobody, for the most part, would remember who I was. I would just be the one-armed guy, but they would remember what I made them feel. They would remember the journey and the story and the inspiration. And then that would change their lives. And so I didn't realize that when I was younger, that I selfishly took that away from them, because everyone needs hope and everybody has it. It's just we got to show them. And so when I started running the longer distances, not only did I realize that I'm a motivator, because somebody asked me, like, when are you writing your book? I was like, I didn't think about that. And that's what kind of starting to get asked to talk. And that's kind of how that happened. But what I identified by setting that goal of having that 50K is that everything became intentional. And I also identified that I don't have time to rest on laurels. I don't have time to sulk in doldrums. I have a schedule. I have a family. And, if I'm going on a 4-hour run today, I mean, it's not uncommon that 2 o'clock the run starts, 2 a.m. the run starts, and then my kids want to go to the zoo, at 10 a.m. But you're intentional with everything that you do. And it is amazing. You're always working to up level towards an ambitious target. And so I call it challenge immersion. And challenge immersion for people that are going through, traumatic times, or, these adversarial circumstances. If you can immerse yourself in something that you truly love, that has an ambitious target towards it, and you are constantly working towards it to make yourself better, you will transform. But you have to make it continual. as soon as you hit that objective, the race is just that icing on the cake, right? Like
Mm.
that's the process,
Mm.
not the product. It's about the process. So once that race or whatever it is happens, you better have something else lined up, or else you're going to be back on the couch. But that's one of the tools, challenge immersion, that I use to really stay in the zone, to not get sidelined by, whatever's going on in my head.
Right on. Right on. I love that. And I love the idea of being in love with the process and not just the race, the event, or the finish line, right? Because I've gone through this myself where you think, man, if I'm training for a marathon and it's going to be it's a 3.5 hour event. But the reality is I trained 750 miles to run
Right.
26.2, right? And if I don't enjoy that 750 miles, if I'm just grinding through that in order to accomplish something, well, it's kind of pointless, right? I mean, I've fell in love with the training, and then the
Right.
the race was actually becomes the celebration. It's kind of like you said, the icing on the cake, right? It's the culmination, but really you got to love the whole thing. You see it as a whole body of work, right? Not just
Right.
because you could wake up on race day and be sick or have terrible weather, it's 100 degrees, whatever. And you're like, okay, so whatever I train for, maybe I'm not going to get. But the reality is, if the goal was the training and the buildup, well, then race day is just sort of it's just another day, right? And then you, you party, you rock it out. And I always think of it too in terms of like baking a cake. Like the training is you're baking this massive wedding cake, right? And then race day, man, you blow that thing up, right? You
Time
tear
to
it up
eat.
it's
Yeah.
time to eat. And at the end, there should be just cake everywhere and crumbs, and it should just be a mess. And it's like, yeah, we partied and we ate the cake. And you get what you get, but you got to love the process, right? The process is where it's at. Otherwise you go, oh man, I wasted 750 miles or 6 months of training because I had a bad day. It's like, no, man, that
Yeah.
wasn't a waste, right?
Oh,
It, it,
oh,
it,
exactly.
you know,
Exactly.
I missed my time
Yeah.
by 8 seconds and I'm defeated. Like, no, that's not the right, you're looking at it wrong. So, but I love that idea of constantly, that immersing yourself in that challenge. It's awesome. Um, well, let's talk just a bit. And I know we're going along, but I love this conversation. And if you've got time, talk a bit about morning routines, if you have them, or kind of what your day looks like now in terms of like things that you find are really important for your mindset and just kind of keeping you on that path.
Yeah. So one, golly, I'm glad you said routine. I've got to work on my nighttime routine. I feel like my morning routine, like, is pretty solid. And it gets more and more difficult because I'm training for a 100 miler that's coming up in August.
Leadville
So right, yeah, Leadville.
is a
And
monster.
yeah, so since the runs are getting longer, I have to wake up earlier. And anyways, we're moving to Texas. So the toughest thing about a morning routine, in my opinion, is when you miss keeping it going.
Mm.
You have to be kind to yourself in that. And you can't, like, you miss your race time by 8 seconds. Yeah, it sucks. But at the same time, dude, like, really,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, come on, man, just get back out there. But what can you do differently? So, my morning routine, first thing I do, wake up, and I'll go through it exactly. Wake up, walk out, let the dog out, feed the dog. Um, Coffee, for the most part, is probably already gonna be brewing. If it made it into the dishwasher, which I'm not big on washing the coffee dishes, because I like to let them. You know what I mean? Like,
They got to steep, man. They need to
yeah,
run with
yeah.
coffee on coffee.
Um, so, um, so yeah. Then as soon as I start the coffee, that it is so crazy how this happens. The coffee is a cue for me. Whenever I start coffee, I want to meditate.
Mm.
Because it takes, a certain amount of time for the coffee to brew. So it's a perfect segue into meditating. So after I do that, go grab my coffee, and then I'll normally listen to a blink, or whatever, while I unload the dishes, and then come back, and I don't fully journal, but I just kind of outline my day, review goals. And if I have time, I might talk about just some emotional stuff or whatever it is. Exercise. And the reason why I don't exercise right when I wake up is just because I feel like I'm getting older, and I need the time of like walking around doing stuff, so I don't rip up my hamstrings or anything else. But that's generally the morning routine. And then as soon as you get back, man, Kids are going to be knocking on, because I've turned the doorknobs around on the kids' doors so they're locked in, and inevitably, Daddy, I have poopy, and that starts about 6:30 in the morning. But yeah, that's the morning routine. And I mean, I'm telling you, oh my God, locking down the morning routine is so. Now, my wife on the flip side, she has her nighttime routine all just locked in tight. And so, but I think the morning routine is really what is going to jumpstart your day, because one, meditating, now I'm on an even keel. Two, journaling, and I call it a daily roll up. Looking at my daily roll up, I have my day lined out, what I'm going to do. I'm reviewing my calendar. Boom. Listening to a blink, or whatever it is, maybe a podcast. Well, now, I've activated my brain, thinking about something new, and I've exercised. I've done more in a 2.5 to 3 hour period than a lot of people do during a day.
Yeah.
And it all started in the morning, and it sets the stage for the rest of my day. But yeah, that's a killer way to do it if you can do that.
Right on, right on. What's next for you, man? What are you excited about? What's on the radar?
I'm excited about these races coming up. I can't help it. Leadville is going to be really fun. I'm doing another one, a 40 miler, probably a couple months before that, and I haven't decided about some others, but I got about 4 on the calendar. So
And
yeah,
you're raising money for a charity, aren't you, on that as well?
Yeah, so Warriors in Quiet Waters is an organization that, again, I love to fly fish, and they bring veterans out to Montana, and they also will take them. I think now they've started going nationwide, but they really facilitate a community. They have an alumni network. It's not just take them out to fish and then cut them
Yeah.
loose. They keep that alumni network going. So, but if anybody wants to go to my website at richingram.com, there's a tab at the top, like a banner, and you can click there and it'll take you to my fundraising page, and it'll tell you why I think you should support these guys. I mean, fly fishing has done more for me and my mental stability than I can even begin to tell. And I know that it has for a lot of other veterans. So a lot of people always ask, like, hey, what veteran organization? This is vetted. It is tax write-off. So check them out. It's a
Right
good
on.
organization.
Awesome, brother. Where can people find you? You mentioned richingram.com, but what other places can people find you, Rich, if anything?
So richingram.com is the website. A lot of different information on there where you want to look at the blogs, get some of the tools that we've talked about today. I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, and check me out. Would love to
Your handle on
you.
Instagram, Rich Ingram. Just look up Rich Ingram, or
I think it's Rich T Ingram.
got it. Perfect. Awesome, brother. We'll get those links in the show notes so people can connect with you. And man, what a great conversation, Rich. It's been such a pleasure and an honor to have you on the show, brother. And I appreciate you sharing so openly everything about your story. I know you just love all the good you're putting out in the world and all that positive energy. It's just fantastic. And I appreciate you so much, brother. It's been great.
Oh, it has been amazing. Thanks, Eric. I appreciate you having me.
My pleasure. To our audience, thank you for taking time to listen. Man, if you like the show, subscribe, share it with a friend, write a review, give us a rating. All those good things help us reach a broader audience. Until next time, friends, I'm Eric Sardina. You've been listening to the Return to Authenticity podcast, and bye for now.